So with my recent decision to review shows and movies alongside games, and with most shows on mid-season break right now, I'm going to be counting down 5 of my favorite shows in no particular order. The only criteria for this list is that the show must be still airing new episodes, and the shows can be animated, live action, anything really, so anything's on the table here. Without further ado, let's get started.
I'm really feeling it!
It's no secret that I'm a fan of The Walking Dead. Heck, my most viewed video of all time was my Season 7 Negan kill prediction, which I totally got right by the way, but I've never gotten the chance to express how much I love the show. I know a lot of the show's original fanbase has stopped watching because it's gotten too repetitive, which is a somewhat fair argument. For the first 5 seasons, the group was constantly moving as every safe place they found was lost, so I get the criticism. Season 6 made the stay at Alexandria permanent, where people have also started saying that the show just got straight up boring. I can also agree with that to a certain extent. For example, walkers aren't really a problem anymore, and there haven't really been any interesting ones, but like I've said from the day I started watching this show, it's not about the zombies, it's about the characters and how they interact with each other. Think about it, would Season 3 have been as interesting if Andrea wasn't a double agent of sorts? Would Episode 408 have been as emotional if the tension between Rick and the Governor wasn't so high? Would we care as much about Sasha if she wasn't affected by Abraham's death? Heck, the only thing that made Season 2 even remotely interesting were all the subplots. Glenn and Maggie attempting to keep their relationship a secret, Lori being pregnant, the debate of whether or not they should kill Randall. It's never been about killing zombies for the fun of it, it's about how the zombies ending society affect the survivors. Say what you will about how the show can be pretentious at times, or how all the build-up for finales and premieres are seemingly filler episodes, but I still like the show. Being adapted from a comic book series, I wonder what'll happen if the show catches up to the comics. Will they do stuff before the comics, or will they just become 2 different storylines? It's a very character-driven show, so if you're not into subplots or character development, then this isn't the show for you, but The Walking Dead takes a standard TV drama and throws zombies into the mix, so it's very unconventional, but it manages to keep my attention every week.
I'm really feeling it!
Star Wars The Clone Wars was one of my favorite shows growing up, and upon rewatching it over the summer, I decided to start watching Star Wars Rebels because the same team works on it. Rebels is closer to the original vision that Dave Filoni had for The Clone Wars, which involved a family dynamic riding through space and fighting stuff. For the most part, this dynamic works. The characters interact as if they were a family, and it adds the comedy element that The Clone Wars didn't have. Don't get me wrong, I like The Clone Wars and its more serious take on everything, but Rebels is a bit refreshing when there aren't arcs that span multiple episodes. Rebels has a lot of filler, but when they actually do story-related stuff, it's very interesting. For example, one week there's an entire episode where Chopper tries to find his leg, but the next episode we have Ahsoka fighting off 2 Inquisitors. The thing I like most about Rebels is how they're constantly bringing in things from the now retcon expanded universe and implementing them into the new Disney canon. Sith holocrons and Grand Admiral Thrawn are just a few of these. They also add things that weren't even in the old expanded universe, like fusing holocrons. The animation style is a bit too cartoonish for my liking, but it's very fluid when it comes to the fight scenes. I really like how Rebels is essentially the spiritual successor to the Clone Wars that we all wanted. Honestly, if given the choice between continuing Clone Wars or continuing Rebels, I'd pick Rebels because Clone Wars already had its conclusion and I want to see more of what Rebels will add to the new canon.
I'm really feeling it!
So I was debating whether or not to put Arrow or The Flash in this spot, but since they're so heavily linked, I figured I'd put them both in the same spot. I only recently started watching both of these shows, and I'm currently caught up with all of them. Arrow and The Flash were really great ways to take some lesser-known DC superheroes and introducing them into a more mainstream audience. We've seen Batman's origin story time and time again, but The Flash and Green Arrow are much more lesser known and much more interesting in my opinion. We get it, Batman, your parents are dead. The Flash runs fast, what do you have? My only gripe with Arrow is how it takes like 2 seasons to set everything up. Season 1 was interesting, but not that much happened. It mostly existed just to set up all the characters and their dynamic. Season 2 was more interesting than Season 1, but I wasn't crazy about it. I liked how they set up Deathstroke, but the payoff wasn't really there for me. Something that bugged me about Seasons 3 and 4 is that how does nobody realize that the Arrow and Green Arrow are the same person? I know that Roy turned himself in as the Arrow, but when Oliver came back as the Green Arrow at the beginning of Season 4, how did nobody realize that they were the same person? Sure, they didn't know it was Oliver, but how did nobody put the puzzle together? Whatever, that's just me nitpicking. Something that I really enjoyed about Arrow Seasons 1 and 2 were all the teases for The Flash, which hadn't yet aired at the time. I think my favorite Flash tease is when Laurel's mother said she was going to Central City and would be there in a flash. I only got that because I watched The Flash first, but it would have otherwise gone right over my head. I like how The Flash is a lot more fast-paced than Arrow, no pun intended. There was always something important going on as opposed to Arrow, where there was the occasional filler episode every now and again. The first season of The Flash was a lot like a Monster of the Week cartoon, where there was a new fun villain to fight every week. I found myself relating to Barry a lot more because he's just a socially awkward nerd, but that quickly went away when he went and created Flashpoint. Like seriously, this dude goes and changes the timeline for his own personal gain, and then messes up everybody else's life as collateral damage. Thanks a lot, Barry, you selfish degenerate. Can't really talk about either of these shows without bringing up the yearly crossovers. Crossover episodes are always fun, but when you take some of the coolest B-list superheroes and have them team up to fight immortal psychopaths or aliens, I completely nerd out. I think that's the first time I've ever said that unironically, ever. If you like superheroes, then I would definitely recommend you check out any of the DC shows. Trust me, they're not as mediocre as any of the DC movies. Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad. Oh man, that was a nasty cough.
I'm really feeling it!
What's something you never thought you'd relate to? For me, it was be a washed-up actor who also happens to be a horse. Bojack Horseman is a show that deals with a multitude of real-life issues, yet brilliantly balances the emotional moments with the funny ones. The show has a very unique form of humor that I really like. It has those quick jabs that would go over some people's heads. Since the show is a Netflix original, they're allowed to swear on the show, yet certain profanities are used very sparingly. Unlike some other shows, it doesn't rely on being raunchy or edgy to be funny. It almost reminds me of early Family Guy, where it was funny without trying to push the limits of what was and wasn't allowed on TV, yet also had the emotional lessons every week.
Carolyn, look! I met John Stamos.
That is not John Stamos!
Hey, Princess Carolyn! John Stamos and I got our ears pierced.
That is not your ear!
Princess Carolyn, John Stamos died.
Bojack Horseman is almost the exact opposite of South Park, which relies on offending as many people as humanly possible. Bojack does a good job at making all types of people feel included. Each character has some sort of emotional turmoil that anybody can relate to. Bojack, for example, is constantly depressed. Todd doesn't know what to do with his life, and Diane is unsure if she married the right person or not. Almost anyone can relate to any character. I haven't started season 3 yet because I've been busy watching other shows, but my favorite season so far is definitely season 2, simply because of those powerful last 2 episodes. Bojack questions his happiness and tries to escape his depression instead of facing it head on. I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but oh my god, those episodes are good. If you have Netflix, then I definitely recommend you check out Bojack Horseman if you haven't yet. I don't hear it get talked about as much as other shows, and it definitely deserves more praise. There's not much that could be said about Rick and Morty that hasn't already been said by, like, everybody. I've never heard anybody say that this is a bad show. Sure, it has its issues, but there are very minor problems. In case you've been living under a rock for the past few years, Rick and Morty is a sci-fi comedy on Adult Swim that follows Rick and his grandson Morty as they go on adventures through alternate realities. It seems like a very niche concept at first, but I've found that people who don't even like sci-fi enjoy this show. The show is just plain interesting. There's interesting concepts, interesting characters, and there is never a dull moment. I can't remember ever being bored while watching the show because it always finds a way to keep my attention. You know how earlier I was talking about how Bojack Horseman was funny without ever being over the top? Well, Rick and Morty is almost the exact opposite of that in that it is so raunchy and over the top with its comedy. You've got entire genocides happening and Rick just shrugs it off. The best example of this is when Rick and Morty go to an alternate reality and replace their dead selves. Morty is just freaking out and Rick's like, whatever.
Morty, here we are.
Oh my god, Rick! Is that us? We're dead!
The dynamic of the two characters is another part of what makes the comedy so great. Rick is this analytical, emotionless genius, and Morty is the exact opposite. He's a morally driven moron, and the way they interact with each other is great. Morty will be like, oh geez, Rick, we just killed somebody, and Rick will be just like, whatever, his life didn't matter. It's so dark, and it isn't afraid to say what it wants. I personally like the existential jokes they throw in there. You know, like the your life doesn't matter, your existence is pointless, you're living a lie kind of humor. Most shows wouldn't dare touch that deep thought kind of stuff, but Rick and Morty shines in this aspect. Much like Bojack Horseman, Rick and Morty balances humor with a deeper message. There are episodes that seem like just straight comedy for 20 minutes, but if you watch the episode again, there are serious undertones of things that require deeper thinking. For example, the intergalactic cable episodes are discreet in their message that most people will just watch anything that's on TV. If you haven't seen Rick and Morty yet, then I would definitely recommend you give it a shot. Season 3 is believed to start around March, so you've got some time to catch up, and I could not be more excited. So that video happened. In the comments section below, let me know what some of your favorite current shows are, and maybe I'll check them out and do a video on them one day. That's all for this video. I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.